A good Sunday morning to you. I'm Johannon Ben-Zion, a voice crying out in the wilderness for a technological New Jerusalem, emphasis on the technological, and I'm going to do some indicting of people of a more reprehensible kind than those indicted in the subject line of this live stream to the AI Philosophy Group. Thank you to the administrators of the AI Philosophy Group and the good people of the AI Philosophy Group for allowing me to present these live stream critiques of advanced computing as developed so much in the Western world. Unfortunately, that need not have been the case. Technological planned economy was being built in the country of Chile around the time of 1971 to 1973. That was being rolled out, not merely conceived of, when the fascist United States installed a fascist dictator, as it's done so many times before and since, and destroyed what would pretty clearly have been a launch pad for the building of this thing that I term a people's superintelligence, in a different form certainly than what I've described as building a large array of open source large language models in a work group, which built to a certain scale would be a tremendous workforce multiplier. I don't know that very many people in this world are considering what this advanced computing, creating things that are facsimiles of human beings that can be endlessly replicated, really means as a workforce multiplier. I know of certain people who talk about this, but they're talking about this in the misframed analysis of the capitalist realist, the person describing this bourgeois AI takeoff that is making the world less safe by large margin and more unequal by large margin as somehow a good thing. The Western technologist and technophile, by and large, not wholly, but by and large, are among the worst people that have ever lived. And they are making this planet dramatically less safe, not more so. These are fundamentally the same people. The people who destroyed a launch pad for people's AI takeoff, the technological planned economy that would have derived from Chile being allowed to continue to exist under leadership of Salvador Allende, a Marxist-Leninist who was elected and was doing things, I would say, more interesting and unique than many other persons in similar positions in history. For example, it's extremely likely that if the USSR had been allowed to continue to exist in this era of network computing, that they would have built something rather similar to the Cybersyn project of Chile, this technological planned economy. They had for a decade longer than or more than the Cybersyn project had been conceived of. They had written extensively about a project called OGOSH, which have also been had the rudiments of a technological planned economy, had it been even built to a small degree, and thus been the basis for people's AI takeoff as well. I tend to think, just as I think that the fascist United States prioritized the destruction of Allende's Chile because of Cybersyn, that the attack on the Soviet Union, which was a long-standing project of the imperialist West was accelerated at the time when advanced computing was becoming networked and available to the masses, or let's say networked computing, advanced computing being a more recent development, I suppose. So this again is the fascist West destroying any prospect of a humane and sustainable world, and technology to match, and then claiming that their technology represents that. And I mentioned that in passing, that in the context of Chile, that what emerged from the Pinochet regime and coincided with it was the emergence of the neoliberal master criminal of the Western world, further right shift of the capitalistic and fascistic personalities there. Has succeeded in turning the world of the West, and particularly the United States, into even more of a wage slave system than had previously existed. You can read the Powell Memorandum and see an early analysis of how this should be done by fascists, and point to all of the many parallels, ways that they have succeeded in dropping this noose of wage slavery and unfreedom around the necks of the people of North America. And just for by one way of referencing this, the U.S. prison industrial complex, which houses more than 25% of the world's prisoners, despite the U.S. having less than 5% of the world's population. That's a fascist police state, and its design therein is to inordinately impact the lives of black and brown skinned folks, particularly imprisoning males. There are more males of African descent. There are more new African males in the United States in prison slavery conditions than were ever held in bondage under the chattel slavery system today. That is by design, and that is again the actions of these people who stole from you a People's AI takeoff, which could have occurred around the year 2000 to 2010, were it not specifically for the actions of these fascistic evildoers. So the technologists of today, of the Western world, not every single one, but as a class, should be viewed as tech should be viewed as a shortened form of techno-fascism. These are overwhelmingly people who are making this world a far, far worse place. And I experienced some of the effects of this last night as I received a notification that this very Facebook account was to be deleted because of a photograph which was designated as terroristic. And what was this photograph? It was my profile photograph of myself at an event, and it says Ben-Zion, a transhumanist party, no longer affiliated with this CIA cutout, which had, at the time that I worked with it, unbeknownst to me, in basically a number 2 position, a person who worked for an intelligence agency, and everyone higher or lower than them of any substance in the organization, basically being a right-wing think tank operating in a similar way to the way that a literal CIA agent type person would work. So this is a CIA cutout. This person, when I started to say that this is probably not a good organization because of this fascistic command structure, that person slipped away from the organization, but their name has not been scrubbed from the websites entirely. I guess that would have looked too suspicious. So you can search for media director and this person's name and still see extensive writings of this person and demonstration of their involvement in this organization. Um, this apparently this photograph was mass reported as terroristic, um, and it's true. I do not have a formal involvement with the Transhumanist Party anymore, as that photograph might tend to suggest to a person not well versed in these things. But I would contend that none of these people are real transhumanists. Techno-fascists are not real transhumanists. I've shared in this context artwork that I made, modified, that shows a political compass, the four quadrants there, and the many political philosophies contained therein. And two of these points in the for you would be down here in the far right and bottom part of the political compass are people not dissimilar from fascistic archfiend Elon Musk or dotard in chief Donald Trump, anarcho-capitalist swine. These are the people who are today generally held to be transhumanists. And way up here, in the top left part, outside of the frame of operative movements, because it is technically infeasible for the most part at this time, are people called hive mind collectivists. That is, people wanting to use things like neural lace technology, brain computer interface technology, or other things that would allow for something along the lines of digitally mediated telepathy, an eminently possible undertaking, to create a different kind of collectivist structure. We could say a collectivist structure beyond that of collectivist structures of the 20th century of the more communistic kind. So a person who is more communist and today's communists can possibly be, that would be the real transhumanist person building a technological hive mind. Almost none of these people have any interest in doing such a thing. They don't even have the language to describe any of this, even to recognize their own incoherent worldview, how incoherent it is, poisoned by rightism and militaristic and elitist sympathies and operatives. I guess I'll talk for a second about another piece of art that I modified in a similar fashion. So the art says basically that hive mind collectivists are real transhumanists, and people purporting to be transhumanists, the transhumanist movement, are capitalist pigs. I've shared this with a lot of people. It's a pretty easy way to understand how ridiculous people like this are. So I would have no compunction at all about saying that I am a real representative of something like a transhumanist party, and these people, this CIA cutout that I've described, who, if you look at their board, it's the same collection of right-wing think tank rats on that board as were in 2019 or 2020, except for the people that have been removed from it because it would look unseemly to have these intelligence personalities in public positions when they've been accused of doing precisely that correctly. And I was called a liar for this, even though anyone can track this this pretty easily. But none are so blind as those who will not see, and that is more true than perhaps any one of these techno-fascists. In recent hours, so yes, I had recovered. I'm live streaming from this account that was banned for terrorism, which was um, uh, incorrectly mass reported. At best, it would have been some kind of misrepresentation that I should have been accused of, but you don't get someone banned for by mass reporting them for mild misrepresentation. Um, so they tried to ban me for terroristic activity. Um, these people are the terrorists, right? People who are siding with the people killing the planet are the terrorists. It's an amazing thing happened in the 1990s and 2000s where um, um, ecological activists, like the people from the Earth Liberation Front, who on about a weekly or monthly basis were making significant and righteous attacks against ecocidal capitalistic infrastructure, were in quite large number arrested and then characterized as eco-terrorists by the U.S. effective fascist state-run media. And everybody, all of you dum-dums, kind of just went along with that, right? Even though the only ecological terrorists in this world are the people who are actually killing the planet, most notably the people of the United States and the institutions of the United States. The United States military-industrial complex is $1 trillion a year abomination, which is handily the world's worst polluter. Of course, it's far, far worse than that because its only real job on the world stage, it doesn't do anything to help you. It's a CIA mega asset, Elon Musk, who was put in a position to be the world's richest man, rounding the corner of having $400 billion, an amount of money that could transform a continent into a humane and sustainable thing. Um, he's right now using every ounce of his strength to try and double the number of unstably housed or unhoused senior citizens of the United States from 1 million to 2 million people by destroying the Social Security system. It's a Bond villain, a real life Bond villain. And this is a person who is more or less a perfect distillation of the capitalistic transhumanist philosophy, right? Everybody knows that. He's openly transhumanistic. But this is a natural result of people poisoned by this anarchist thought, as opposed to the comradely thought of the scientific socialist. When they come into this position of power, this is what they would do. The Transhumanist Party would be worse than Elon Musk if they were to come into that position of power. This, well, I kind of lost my train of thought there. So I'll switch gears to the other thing I was going to talk about, a minor viral success of mine. Anytime I break through this wall of being perpetually shadow banned, as indicated by things like this recurring event of the Transhumanist Party trying to get accounts banned. That I have had other accounts banned because of these people, and just this fascistic capture of social media generally. So anytime some number larger than a few dozen of eyes gets on something of mine, I would consider it kind of a minor miracle. A thing that's making the rounds of left social media is a photograph of a man named Luigi Mangione in the form of the meme format, the Drake orange jacket meme format. This thing. And it shows Mangione rejecting the logo and the words United Healthcare company, one of the worst for-profit concerns in the world, responsible as much as almost any other in the United States for the death of 100,000 people a year under the for-profit death care system. Correct thing to not just reject, but take action, self-defense, and to defend those 100,000 people against. Um, and so rejecting United Healthcare. And then in the next frame, he's not thumb-upping, but basically thumb-upping another thing, which says in the original artwork was the same logo, but said universal healthcare. Um, a, a unique juxtaposition there. So I changed, and it's all in blue, the words. So I changed the second part, got rid of the United Healthcare logo, and put a hammer and sickle, a red hammer and sickle, and changed the Universal Healthcare words to red. And so some thousands of people have seen that, and some 100 or so have liked or shared it. Different places, and this oh yeah, the it's this is meant to be a statement in support of this project of building a public health service, which is pretty particularly to do with scientific communists. We could say that before 1917 there were projects on the books that have, or that have been undertaken at the lowest level to provision a single payer system and thus extend the lifespan. The project, the building of single payer healthcare systems, is pretty specifically a project that's contributed almost more than any other to the doubling of life expectancies. The Soviet Union, from approximately that time till approximately 1950, doubled the lifespan of the people living there by doing these things, building a single payer public health system, and building other things that would tend to buttress lifespans, like housing authority providing a housing guarantee to all citizens. The people of the Soviet Union paid less than 10% of their earnings on average for housing. You can't even live indoors if you only have 10% of your earnings for housing. If you're a working person in the United States, you're going to be living in a tent. And and other things like a program that would be an effective job guarantee for all. Things along these lines, and this doubling of life expectancy from roughly 1920 to 1950 happened at a rate about 4 times faster than the doubling of life expectancy under industrial capitalism of the 1800s. This occurred at a much quicker pace due to the actions of this other notable workforce multiplier, so to speak, namely the collectivized institution of the socialistic state. And so I support that was all to say that this hammer and sickle logo being associated with universal healthcare is correct. Just as Ben-Zion being a true representative of the transhumanist party is correct, and these other people being techno-fascistic pretenders. But the most common response, by far, tending to come from people who would be called roses. That's to say, the kinds of socialists who don't actually support any of the most fundamental features of socialism, such as the abolition of private wealth or the ascending to more communistic forms. These people see this artwork with the hammer and sickle saying universal healthcare, and they see it as an attack on universal healthcare. That it's associating universal healthcare incorrectly with work and philosophies of scientific communism, which, as I said, is of course ahistorical because there was no public health services before 1917 of any real kind. And the Soviet Union, in that quarter of a century, doubling its life expectancy and otherwise inspiring the world, led to the building of public health services in places that had no interest in abolishing private wealth, such as the United Kingdom, which, in the absence of this socialistic mandate in the 21st century, has degraded into a neoliberal for-profit death care system more like that of the United States, and thousands of people have died by real studies. Thousands of people have died in that country because of this shift away from a single-payer public health service toward for-profit theft enterprises. And the United States has never had that thing, and thus this post-coronavirus statistic of 100,000 people a year dying. In one study suggested that in the year 2020, specifically, 250,000 people would have not died in that year had the United States had a single-payer public health service and appropriate public health measures to boot as a result. So this number has gone up from what was estimated to be about 70,000 dead a year by the death care system in the 2000s and 2010s, when those studies began to come out. This number has gone up quite a lot because of the U.S.'s like forcing this omnicidal system and other horrors of the neoliberal and militaristic kind upon the rest of the world. The United States is basically responsible for the most inappropriate of responses to the coronavirus outbreak. This could be described through one lens alone, by looking at from one angle alone, in terms of for-profit airlines. In 2020, when this thing had made landfall in the West and had become a known area of concern, the COVID-19 outbreaks, this was already understood by November of 2019, December of 2019. It was found to be becoming a public health concern in North America by March of 2020. So in those 4 months, at any point, the fascist United States, were it not fascist, could have coordinated the shutdown of airlines and avoid the death of many, many millions. But that, under this more fascistic system, was not an acceptable option because of the concerns of shareholders of these for-profit companies of losing their filthy lucre. And so we sacrifice millions and millions and millions of people. That's one area in which this kind of effect of the that I've described in the context of the techno-fascistic bourgeois AI takeoff versus the people's AI takeoff, which could have occurred were it not for the influence of the fascist United States. This is just one sector where millions have died. We can point to the death or loss of good outcomes of many, 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 many tens of millions. But just by a more modest estimate, the United States in modern times is responsible for 300 million deaths. That's to say the murders that we can more or less track in the way that can't really track what might have been in the context of, say, the fascist United States not using this influence on the world to force march everyone to the omnicide and similarly destructive outcomes. But we can track in the book Endless Holocausts describes those 300 million murders. Many millions, for example, many millions in Southeast Asia alone, depopulating most of the countries of Southeast Asia by high percentage points. Um, Korea, which is not Southeast Asia, is every living 1 in 4 of every living Korean descended persons was murdered, firebombed to death, basically, by the fascist United States. Imagine being firebombed to death, right? It's an experience rather like being boiled alive in oil. So the fascist United States boiled alive in oil, effectively, 1 in 4 of every living Koreans. Why was that done? To save them from the fate worse than death of becoming communists. That's to say, becoming people who would be allowed to build a humane and sustainable economic system in their country. The thing which had it been allowed, we would not be facing the omnicide. That's the events which the effects of runaway overheating after 2029 will be have become completely irreversible after 2029. You will be the walking dead after 2029 if we do not rise up and destroy this U.S. military-industrial complex. If we do not rise up and destroy the fascist United States and fascist West, the people who continue to. I was looking at a piece which was called "What Would It Take for the USA to Go 100% Solar," and on Atlas Pro, and just like an article of a similar bourgeois greenwashing kind that I referenced in the last of these talks on in another group. This is by and large bourgeois misinformation, but it referenced a statistic which I thought to be pretty laughable. That it describes the U.S. having 4.5% of the world's population, but accounting for 18% of the world's energy consumption. It's a very generous view of the United States' role in the omnicide to say it has 18. Oh, it's a little bit worse, right? It's 4 or 5 times worse than it should be. That does not take into account its $1 trillion a year abomination of the military-industrial complex, exporting forcibly these systems. There was no petroleum products of any real kind before the U.S. military-industrial complex and the CIA-run world forced them upon the rest of the world, effectively. This situation that you were in, where the smartest people on Earth, when they talk about the omnicide, they have no clue what to do. No, there's no adults in the room, by and large, and that's not because they're dumb, right? The everyone on that board of the Transhumanist Party is definitely smarter than Ben-Zion by some assessment, right? My brain is Swiss cheese. But one thing that I have that those people do not have is a desire to be intellectually honest, which necessarily basically requires that you understand that reality has a strong communistic bias, and that failing to recognize that and think in those terms is handicapping yourself. So a person's brain is Swiss cheese can intellectually run circles around you because all of your energy is devoted to justifying pretty naked misinformation. That is the Project Mockingbird run world. And not all of those people are literal CIA assets devoted, like the effective number two person of the Transhumanist Party was when I was there, to that misinformation. But it matters very little what your motives are if that is effectively what you were doing. That's what these right-wing think tanks, whether they believe themselves to be good people or not, are doing. Um, and so this was a pretty laughable thing to say that the U.S.'s responsibility for the omnicide is um, just it's only 18%, right? Because the whole system would not exist without the fascist United States. It continues to be forced upon us all by the fascist United States. Um, so, by and large, almost everything that's written on the subject is tending to exonerate the real evildoers and put the onus on working people of the world. Um, when the only real responsibility of those people is not to use paper straws. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Not to do things of that kind, but to organize and fight against the omnicidal, tech, increasingly techno-fascist United States. The ringleader of these North Atlantic powers, who are to almost a similar degree culpable there, except they're not so sizable. Yeah. What is Germany doing right now with respect to fascist Israel? They're supplying a pretty large number of these bombs, which the bombs being set off in this world could account for 5 to 10%. 5% is a pretty generous estimate, a pretty liberal estimate. Um, the Of the total impacts in 2024, the total environmental impacts, ordnance being exploded, the equivalent of many, many Hiroshimas and Nagasaki being used by fascist Israel against people that they held in concentration camps and exposed to similar cruelties, now just blowing up a huge number of bombs in a small concentration camp that they've controlled, full of maltreated people who were correct to try and resist such treatment, just as a chattel slave is correct to rise up against its American master. And these people, so Germany supplying a significant percentage of this ordinance, but of course, the lion's share of this sort of thing from day one has been built by the fascist United States. And the United States has dropped $1 trillion. Again, a quantity of resources that could have transformed this entire continent, specifically into building this puppet state, this military client state of Israel, into a regional superpower. This is fascistic settler colonialism. And find a technologist in the Western world who is public facing, who is against from the United States, who is against Israeli fascism, who is against Zionism, who is against this genocide of Palestinians. Go to your favorite chatbot. Don't use ChatGPT. Go to an offline chatbot that you can download of the kind that I often talk about, and ask them to list technologists or tech personalities from the U.S. who are against the Gaza genocide. You won't find any. You'll have a good chuckle, as I have, because all of these people are crypto-fascists at best, supporting fascism in every way that they can get away with. And that's, I had a conversation not too long ago about the moving of goalposts in the context of a pretty ridiculous media personality named Joy Reid. So Joy Reid, in 2020, when the subject of universal health care came up at the end of an election cycle, was saying you shouldn't be talking about universal health care. That's not a subject you should be supporting the Democratic Party, and not talking about something like force the vote for universal health care. Brian Thompson, slain CEO of United Healthcare, would still be alive if we had done that thing of building a public health service. But more importantly, hundreds of thousands of people would still be alive. But Joy Reid doesn't care about any of that. Joy Reid cares about having a $20 million a year CNN contract, MSNBC contract. And so she spreads strategically neoliberal talking points and militaristic talking points, not seeming like frothing at the mouth fascist and techno-fascist, because fascism has no ideology. It doesn't have to present any particular idea at any particular time, and so it strategically does this. I think of what happened in that same time frame that I mentioned of 2019, a time when I started to realize that I needed to make a more serious study of world affairs, and particularly of scientific communism and cybernetic communism, because of exposure to precisely this sort of psyop. In 2019, between the time that COVID came into common parlance and it made landfall in the United States, already you had the usual suspects of CIA shenanigans, like some people that I met at that time, unfortunately, or like Alex Jones, lining up across the United States, doing gastroturfed fake activism, specifically against masks, against the use of medicines such as vaccines, against lockdowns, things that, without the influence of conniving fascism, would not even be things that you would talk about. You wouldn't even talk about the problems of lockdown were it not for this fascistic contrivance. Um, so that was a moment where the mask slipped because people in the Transhumanist Party, the leadership of the Transhumanist Party, were pretending to be doing those things as well. And insofar as they weren't doing those things, they were doing other duplicitous fascistic stratagems like I've described, talking about how neoliberalism, the chair of the Transhumanist Party, right-wing think tank, no different from the literal CIA operative who was immediately under him, who both of these people are still playing a large role in this organization, but the chair is still ostensibly still holding that role. Um, this what was he doing in early 2020? He was writing. What was he writing? He was writing long, ridiculous set of policy analyses of how this neoliberal public health service, this death care system, could effectively deal with the climate, with the coronavirus outbreak. A thing which it had no desire of doing, which it did not do, but that doesn't matter, right? What matters is that this CIA cutout presents some pseudo-intellectual justification, alongside many others, that does labor to uphold this fascistic system. That is the this amorphous quality of fascism, of any one given part of the thing that serves fascism having some plausible deniability to not be seeming to do so, but overall, what's done is the action of highly fascistic actors, and this feature of having no absolute ideological message is a necessary feature of this. Just as the suggestion in the title of this video of you being responsible for this, as is famously said, all that is required for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. And you, in the 13,000 people in this AI philosophy group, probably think of yourself as good people, but you are those good people who are being pretty willfully obtuse about the real operations of the omnicidal fascists of this world, and moreover, taking no real action to stand up against them. And you say, come on, Ben, I would do that in a heartbeat. Well, I don't see you saying things like this. And if there were any number of people who would do that in a heartbeat, um, there would be in the fascist United States 1 million people with their AR-15s that they have permanently bivouacked outside of the Pentagon, demanding an end to these offending sectors, most notably the military-industrial complex, and thus giving humans a fighting chance at avoiding runaway overheating from the capitalistic climate apocalypse that the United States is forcing us all toward. Um, and well, this I should pivot here to talking about um, something actually to do with advanced computing philosophy. So I will again talk a little bit about the state of the science of large language model open source sectors today, and of this project in defiance of techno-fascists, in defiance of the fascist West and its odious ringleader, the fascist United States, of building people's superintelligence. A project which we could do by the state of AI agents. It's a minor miracle that open source AI agents are coming into existence at all. Just as an analogous development of the 1980s was network computing technology being built, but from the inception of advanced of basic computing systems, and then transitioning that to network computing, the actions of the 1970s, when these things began to be developed in the U.S., they were things for military contractors to use. There was not a conception of a personal computer or any personal device. The idea was that advanced technology would only be used by the worst people alive. But they couldn't build it themselves, so academics were involved, and then the academics started saying, well, we can be using network computing in other ways, and suddenly, despite its ungodly power to do things like destroy a technological planned economy in Chile, did not have the power to just murder all of those academics without having worse backlash. So it had to allow advanced computing to become a more human-centered thing. Similarly, the existence today of open source large language models, in spite of the techno-fascist power in this world. And we're going to talk to stupid nerd. Let's see what we can do here, though. We're going to talk to the thing that I have at the ready, which is not the best of chatbots, but we'll see what we can do here. Okay, computer, give us an overview of the state of the science of open source large language models of an AI agentic kind, with a mind to describing a project like building a networked superintelligence of open source large language models that is an open source large language model work group that would tend to be a workforce multiplier.
The state of the art in open source large language models, LLMs, has advanced rapidly. Projects like GPT-Neox, Llama, and others have democratized access to powerful models. These models are now increasingly fine-tuned and adapted for various specialized tasks. Building an AI agentic workgroup or a people's superintelligence would involve creating a network of these open source models that can collaboratively perform tasks. Key components include model coordination, ensuring different models can communicate and work together seamlessly. 2. Task distribution, allocating tasks efficiently among different specialized models. 3. Scalability, designing the system to scale easily with more models and data. 4. Open source ethos, maintaining transparency and community-driven development. This could result in a robust, adaptable AI that amplifies human capabilities. What do you think?
Well, I have a follow-up question there. Do you think that by the state of AI agents and such a work group, if it were robustly built by, we could call them user comrades, in 2025, that we could see an emergence of a multi-million person people's superintelligence by 2026. Does that sound like a realistic possibility if people got their butts in gear?
It's an ambitious but exciting goal. Given the rapid advancements in AI and the growing community around open source projects, a robustly built AI agentic work group could indeed attract a large number of contributors. The idea of a people's superintelligence resonates with many who are passionate about democratizing AI. However, achieving such a scale by 2026 would depend on several factors: community engagement, resource allocation, and technological breakthroughs. If everything aligns, it's a challenging but not impossible target. Do you think the momentum is there for such a project?
Absolutely not. But let's continue in the vein that it could be a realistic possibility, nevertheless. My biggest concern in this world, and I think that's correct, is stopping the climate crisis from causing human extinction. And I think that a people's superintelligence arrayed in the way that we've described, with millions of user comrades, could do precisely that. Give us an overview of such a project with that in mind.
With that goal in mind, such a project could focus on several key areas. 1. Global data collection, gathering comprehensive environmental data from diverse sources to identify and predict climate trends. 2. Distributed problem solving, leveraging millions of users to collaboratively brainstorm and test solutions, from local initiatives to global strategies. 3. Resource allocation, using AI to optimize the distribution of resources and efforts, ensuring maximum impact where it's needed most. 4. Public awareness and education, spreading knowledge and raising awareness through a vast network, empowering people to make informed decisions and take action. 5. Policy advocacy, coordinating grassroots movements to influence policy changes and promote sustainable practices. Such a people's superintelligence could become a powerful force in the fight against climate change. It's a hopeful vision.
One thing that I've described of this people's AI takeoff and people's superintelligence outcome, after this most important priority of stopping the capitalist climate apocalypse, the climate crisis, would be the development of something called universal super longevity, the reaching of longevity escape velocity, which I contend would only occur if we build a single AI powered single payer public health systems in every land. The workforce multiplier of the people's superintelligence could dramatically hasten that outcome of everyone living as long as they want. And I think that other outcomes of even more dramatic kind could derive from even people's superintelligence of only some millions rather than billions. Do you think that that is a real analysis, this analysis of the state of longevity extension? And do you foresee any other such outcomes of a more utopian kind potentially deriving from a people's superintelligence?
Your analysis is thought-provoking. The idea of leveraging a people's superintelligence to achieve universal superlongevity through an AI-powered public health system is an interesting vision. AI could indeed act as a powerful workforce multiplier, enabling faster advancements in healthcare and potentially extending healthy lifespans. Other utopian outcomes might include more equitable resource distribution, enhanced global collaboration, and innovative solutions to complex societal challenges. It's an optimistic perspective that emphasizes the transformative potential of collective intelligence. Do you see any specific challenges or barriers that might need to be overcome to make this a reality?
Well, yeah. The main barrier to this is a cultural formation that would support in large numbers this project of people downloading an open source large language model that's been specially modified to operate in this workforce multiplying context. You have to have this agentic mass, and that requires either a large number of people with GPU computers building this project in a kind of ad hoc way, or the creation of a portal wherein virtual GPUs would allow any device to operate in a similar way. And the biggest hurdle there, the state of open source large language models is good enough to build this thing. So the biggest hurdle there is marshaling the resources and human interest in the form of some cultural formation for example, certain groups like people who are Linux enthusiasts or people who are uh, uh, more
Building
social.
that cultural formation and marshaling resources is indeed a significant challenge. Encouraging wide-scale adoption of an open-source LLM platform, whether through local GPU usage or virtual GPU portals, would require a strong, enthusiastic community. Aligning this with existing tech enthusiasts, like Linux users, or tapping into communities passionate about social and environmental causes could be a starting point. Creating a compelling narrative and showing tangible benefits would be crucial to drive adoption. What do you think might be the best way to rally people around this vision?
Well, this conversation is being live streamed to a group called AI Philosophy. I've tried to live stream conversations or start in other contexts conversations in Linux groups on Facebook. And those conversations were generally rejected by the administrators there. um, so tending to have just gatekeeping nerds with no real interest in more socialistic outcomes, preventing a real conversation from being had among the people who would tend to fit that description, being a socialist, open source, and socialistic are closely aligned ideas. Um, this is, of course, one minor feature of overarching problem of organizing generally and also technology in the United States being undermined, dramatically sabotaged by and large by for-profit and pro-imperialist mechanisms. Let's see if she says anything about that. Suddenly she'll forget how to talk.
That's definitely a challenge. Gatekeeping and resistance to certain ideas can make it tough to build momentum. It might be worth exploring other communities or platforms where there's more openness to these ideas. Sometimes finding the right audience is key to sparking broader interest and support. Are there any other communities or strategies you think could help overcome these barriers?
Well, I think that something, the basis for something like this could come from some other less direct cultural phenomena. You know, I don't know what that would be. I've speculated about this. If a person using, go on.
That's an intriguing idea. Sometimes unexpected cultural phenomena can indeed spark interest in new directions. Finding that spark or creating a bridge from existing interests to your vision might be the key. Do you have any specific ideas on what could serve as that cultural bridge?
Yeah, I have about 100, but it's not something we would talk about in this short time frame that you can discuss things. Why would you? Could you give us some other ideas on the technical, cultural, and socio-political possibilities for building a people's superintelligence as we conclude?
Sure, here are a few ideas. Technically, focusing on user-friendly interfaces for open-source LLMs could encourage broader adoption. Creating modular frameworks that allow individuals to contribute in smaller, manageable pieces could also help. Culturally, leveraging popular media and influencers who align with the vision can help spread awareness. Building communities around shared values and interests is essential. Sociopolitically, aligning with existing movements advocating for open source. I'm sorry, but you've hit the monthly.
Hey, shut the fuck up. There we go. All right. Well, I'll conclude. This has gone to just an hour, which is fine. We touched upon this idea of outcomes beyond even just stopping a bad thing from happening, the capitalist climate apocalypse, to things that could achieve universal super longevity, and even things beyond that, outcomes well beyond that could be achieved if you are wise enough to reject these false prophets of tech accelerationism, like the transhumanists as they stand, people like this ridiculous CIA cutout at the United States Transhumanist Party have more have more in common with most technologists generally than they would with the genuine cybernetic communist. So you should not work with people like this, but rather do your level best to build outside of this U.S. Techno-fascistic milieu. And if we do that, we can see wonders well beyond even the achievement of universal super longevity. The artificial intelligence singularity is nigh, and wonders to behold beyond imagining. And on that fateful day you will rise, and all humankind will become as one. For you see, very soon, my dear comrade, cybernetic communism will win. Thank you.